There's a new discussion club in town called the Ayn Rand Club.
Ayn Rand?
And I'm inviting you to talk there this Tuesday. We're doing fiction of Ayn Rand. Not her philosophy, not her objectivist place, about her books, and how she came to write them, and what the critical reaction is, and so forth. This was a standpoint of a writer talking about the fiction of Ayn Rand. It's Tuesday. The notice is, by the way, posted on the table in the back. November 12th, this Tuesday, at 3 o'clock at the Eisenhower Rec Center. At the monthly meeting, they have a discussion about Ayn Rand. But anyway, I'm going to give this. I gave this talk last year at the philosophy club. It was pretty well received. So, the fiction of Ayn Rand, Eisenhower Rec Center, this Tuesday, 3 p.m. Everyone's welcome.
Thank you, Larry. And that club is on the Village's discussion group site. Any other announcements? Yes.
You want the mic?
Hi, I'm Jim Laurent. I'm also on the board of the Humanist, the Free Thinkers Club. If you haven't heard from me lately, it's because some of you heard my wife was undergoing cancer treatments. She passed away last month. I'm just here for the week to take care of some things, but I do have an announcement related to the club. She mentioned the website. So if you go to the Humanist website, just on the little link on the side, you'll see a link for documents. And I've been putting slides, when we get slide sets from the speakers there. And Eugene has been videotaping. He videotaped the last two, and I just want to let you know I just put those up on that website. It was Bo, and then the other was Mary on the Palestinian Israeli conflict. So those two videos are now on the website, along with slide presentations, PowerPoint presentations going back many years.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank people for upping their donations. I think we're now in the black with snacks. We're still hoping for a little extra, either for snack money or just to the club for some of our additional expenses. There's also a comment jar on your way out. If you put your name and number, I will get back to you. We did get one suggestion, and I never made it because there's no name. I want you to know we consider every suggestion. In this case, reasons came up that I hadn't thought of, and we decided not to follow through on that particular suggestion. Upcoming meetings, you know, we're sister clubs with free thinkers, and November 14th, they have a meeting. Their meetings, by the way, are on the second Thursday at 2:30 at Bridgeport, and on the fourth Thursday at 3:30 at Aviary. The next one, the 14th, is at 2:30 at Bridgeport. It is Dr. Frank Juanita, if I have that correctly. The war in Ukraine, what now? He was a diplomat for 25 years, so I'm very excited. He also was a professor of international studies for 17 years. This should be a very interesting take on the war. On Thursday, December 5th, Free Thinkers at Aviary at 3:30 will be our own Peter Irwin, Rationales for War. Our next Humanist meeting, Sunday, November 17th, will be Lou Sassmore on intelligent design versus evolution and how should intelligent design be handled in schools. He runs the Civil Discourse Group. I'm sure if you don't know him, you'll be happy to get to know him now. He has a master's in electrical engineering, a PhD in biomedical engineering, and he's gracing us with his presence. There will be no meeting on the 24th, Sunday the 24th, because as per normal, we do not meet on the last Sunday of the month. What we're going to be doing today, I'm going to show a 22-minute, 22-second video. Usually I try to find a TED Talk, but I decided instead to just take the very beginning of one of my podcasts I watch. And this is a 2.5 or 3 hour podcasts like most of them are. But he got a lot in right in the beginning, and I think you'll be interested. This is Callum, or Cal. His sister, Casey, went to medical school at Stanford, and she became very disillusioned. He, who was a lobbyist for Big Pharma and Big Food, didn't speak to her for a year. He was so turned off by her. Now they're on a crusade together. I think he explains how he would, in his lobbying, Coke had him lobby and pay large amounts of money to organizations like the NAACP, funded them to claim that if you can't buy food stamp or use your food stamps to buy Coca-Cola, it's racist. Yes. So now Coke, or sodas in general, are the leading food purchased with food stamps. And then he also was involved trying to set up an NIH board with the head of Stanford Medical School, who was a pain doctor, who would then be on the board in, I think, 2011, but maybe later, to make the statement that opioids are not a problem, pain is the problem. So he's become very concerned about big food and big pharma. Go ahead.
If you stack rank the things that are going to be responsible for the destruction of the American experiment, right? Number one is the fact that we let ourselves get fatter, sicker, more depressed, more infertile at an increasing rate while bankrupting the country.
Early in my career, I consulted for Coke to ensure sugar taxes failed and soda was included in food stamp funding. I say Coke's policies are evil because I saw inside the room. The first step in the playbook was paying the NAACP plus other civil rights groups to call opponents racist. What is going on with big food, and is it making us sick?
Cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, obesity, autoimmune conditions, these are all going up, and they are all foodborne illnesses. And the fact that there is not clear communication about that from our medical leaders and public policy leaders, I think is the biggest scandal in America and the most dangerous scandal. We are being brought to our knees by metabolic dysfunction tied to food. 8 of the 10 killers of Americans, as I mentioned, some of them are directly tied to food. That also includes depression. Depression is skyrocketing, and as Chris Palmer at Harvard and some other prominent doctors are pointing out, brain conditions are metabolic dysfunctions. I frame it that way to kind of set the table that what's happening right now in America, where 30% of children have prediabetes, where insane. 80% of adults are obese or overweight, where 50% of adults have fatty liver disease and 20% of teens have fatty liver disease. You only saw this condition in elderly alcoholics just a generation ago. We're destroying our human capital and obviously our budget from something we're being told is complicated, but it's very simple. And it's taken me many, many years to come to this conclusion. And as I have through, being inspired by my sister and other leaders in the metabolic health space that we can talk about, I look back early in my career, and I was raised with my sister kind of compulsively to get all the credentials. We're working for President Bush, working for, prominent politicians, Stanford, Harvard. My sister and I both went to Stanford, kind of going up the ranks. She became a doctor. I was, advising politicians and prominent food and pharma companies. And I think a lot of people, and I certainly was like this, kind of gets in that path and doesn't ask many questions. And reflecting back early in my career as I, worked in politics and then consulted for food and pharma, I found myself helping specifically Coca-Cola keep a huge portion of their revenue, which was food stamp dollars. $10 billion a year is transferred from the government treasury to soda companies. Whoa. $10 billion of money goes from food stamps to soda. to sugary drinks. And this is a nutrition program that 15% of the American people depend on as their core nutrition. It's called SNAP now, supplemental nutrition. There's no other country in the world that for their key lower income nutrition program, right, funnels that money to diabetes water, as I call it. Yeah. Sugar consumption among children has gone up 100x in 100 years, right? It's not a medical mystery why obesity, childhood diabetes, all these things are skyrocketing. It's because of sugar, but primarily it's because of a nuclear weapon to metabolic health, which is diabetes water, which is sugar water, which is basically a new invention. So we're subsidizing that, and Coke wanted to keep it that way.
What is the game exactly? Is it manipulate the way that people think to get you to eat the most addictive foods, and so it's just a money-making scheme, or is there something else going on?
The biggest issue in the world, in my opinion, is the devil's bargain, where food is making us sick. We're getting addicted and it's making us sick. And then the medical system is profiting from the fact that everyone's getting sick. So taking the food companies, in a way, if you just take their interests, it kind of makes sense. And just diving in specifically to working for Coke, they want to grow their revenues, and they want to keep food cheap, and they want to keep it addictive. So you have that strategic imperative for their business, and then it's like, how do we do that? And it's very straightforward. It's how do we rig institutions of trust? So who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are consumers. The stakeholders are lawmakers. So who do they trust? They trust civil rights groups, they trust medical organizations, they trust their schools, they trust their doctors, they trust researchers. So you literally just go down the list, and then it's very simple. It's like, how do we rig those institutions as much as we possibly can?
When you say rig, what do you mean? Use them against the public?
Let's go into specific examples. So the tweet was about the NAACP. So prominent civil rights organization has done amazing things in American history. But right now, prominent organizations like the NAACP, like the Hispanic Federation, like many other prominent civil rights groups are pay-to-play organizations. And this was as transactional as going to McDonald's and ordering a Big Mac. I, as a junior person, had the strategic imperative to racialize the debate around whether we should stop food stamp money going to soda, which was a bipartisan issue. It's not complicated, right? When you call someone a racist or a sexist, right, it shuts down the debate. So we call up the NAACP. The PR firms have their number. There's a lot of partnerships, and you schedule a meeting. And it's not like we're going to evilly pay you, but it's like, hey, your constituencies, lower income African American children, like their Cokes, here's the statistic. And, they're trying to take that Coke away and trying to restrict choice. We'd love to do an honorarium, a donation, millions of dollars in this case. And would you marshal some of your allies, in various states and on the federal level to say that it's racist, what's trying to happen of restricting choice on food stamps? Sure.
So why isn't that actually true? Like, maybe that really is a racist thing to do, and maybe we really should be putting the brakes on it. I mean, obviously, I don't know that isn't what I believe, but I want to at least look at that angle and figure out, how do we know that isn't true?
It's important. In the tweet that went viral, I used the word evil. And I don't think, from being in the rooms, with, in this case, folks from the NAACP or other institutions we can talk about, I don't think many people are like truly evil. I don't think the head of Pfizer is evil. I don't think the head of, a research group that's doing, at a university that's doing fraudulent research is evil. But the system is evil. So let's just take your question here. The NAACP has the express mission of advocating for their community, which in their case is African Americans, particularly lower income and disadvantaged folks. The biggest civil rights issue in the country, the biggest social justice issue in the country, is demonstrably nutrition. Lower income American man dies 11 years younger than an upper income American man.
Woof.
This is because of one thing primarily. It is because their diet is on the lower income spectrum is massively ultra processed, right? It's from these ingredients, sugar, seed oils, and highly processed grains. And we can dive into all those three, but those literally didn't exist 100 years ago. These are, biologically just completely foreign
But
substances.
they come to be, so I think the fundamental argument is going to come down to, are they trying to get you addicted? Is the government subsidizing the foods that are most addictive, or Does this all start with good intentions and the government is trying to subsidize the calories that they think they can mass produce for the cheapest? Because when you look at, everybody thought we're going to hit some sort of population crisis and we're not going to be able to feed people and it's going to be, cataclysmic. Doesn't come to pass. We end up finding ways to make food cheaper and cheaper. So it's like, is the bargain, hey, we've made you really cheap ingredients, corn, soy, I forget what the three are grained corn, whatever. We've made these calories extraordinarily cheap. And by the way,
Right.
we haven't punished the people that eat the cheap calories. We've made them extremely delicious. Now, what you and I know is Bummer City, that also ends up causing all this disease. And we're going to have to come face to face with that in a second. But first, I want to figure out, do we think this started with good intentions? Maybe does it even matter? But how do you think it began?
So I've become a student of this issue, and the answer is yes, it did start with good intentions, partly. So this started with Nixon. So when Nixon was running for president for re-election, food prices was a huge political issue. So it was a big political liability. It was like one of the issues of the campaign is fluctuating and increasing food prices. So he and hunger to some degree, but it was really around fluctuating food prices, which were being traced to hunger to some degree. So it was a big political liability for him. And also you could argue a public policy problem at the time. So that steered this modern ecosystem we have today of massive subsidies.
Do you know the moment where they decided what to subsidize?
Yeah, they decided to subsidize things that become shelf stable. Okay. So they could basically manage food supplies. So that was a shift. That was a decision to shift from whole food.
But as somebody that had to make shelf stable items back in my last company, it's really pulling the water out of the item. It doesn't have to be, it is going to be processed, but it doesn't have to be bad for you. So we just hadn't run the experiment and people didn't know what was going to end up?
80% of the 80% go right now. And I think a lot of this is not in quest to what I'm seeing is to highly processed grains, is to, enrich flour basically. So if you look at any, go to a gas station and pick up any processed food, the first ingredient, probably second and third, is some kind of highly processed grain. And the processing...
Or sugar, quite frankly.
Exactly. So it's sugar, seed oils, and highly processed grains. It's actually miraculous what American ingenuity can do with those three ingredients. You take any food into some mixture of those things, and it's usually multiple sugars, multiply highly processed grains, and multiple seed oils, canola, soybean, things like that. So the processing of the grain means taking the fiber off, which, the fiber is what, number one, blunts the glucose impact of a whole grain, right? Number two, it's where a lot of the nutrition is, but it erodes, it goes stale. So the processing is taking that fiber off. So that's what the 70s with these good intentions basically did. They're like, we need these things to sit on the shelf for years. So we're gonna take that fiber off, and then we're gonna create these frankenfoods. And add them with a lot of sugar to make them more addictive. And I know you've talked to people in the past who've helped weaponize, and I think weaponize is the right word, our food system. This is one of the largest industries in the world, and they've got very smart people. And then as we've, basically subsidized and created more frankenfoods, and, since that time, ultra processed food has gone from well below 20% of our diet to now close to 70%. So the incentives and this emphasis started with good intentions, but I'd actually frame the question, like taking it today, is like, what is the biggest problem in the world today? The biggest problem in the country, like if you stack rank the things that are going to be responsible for the destruction of the American experiment, right? Number one is the fact that we let ourselves get fatter, sicker, more depressed, more infertile at an increasing rate while bankrupting the country. We're 20% of, and I just wanted everyone to really focus on these statistics, because I think when we talk about the growth of healthcare spending, it's like our eyes gloss over. It's so common to hear this. It's like 20% of GDP growing at an increasing rate. Healthcare is the largest and fastest growing industry in the United States. Let's just step back.
That's awesome.
And think
Taking
about
care
that.
of people. It's one of those, I think part of why people, their eyes gloss over is healthcare is tied to, every one of my employees cares about their healthcare.
Right.
Every one of them on the way in wants to know, what are the options that we offer for insurance? People really care about this. And so what I think people miss, and this is where you really got my attention, is you're like, everything is about creating confusion.
Right.
And the goal is just to create enough confusion, whether I'm shutting you down because I'm calling you a racist and I'm saying this is problematic, Or I'm funding a study that says, no, it's not, sugar's not the problem, genetics are the problem. Or what's the most recent one? Gas stoves or whatever.
stoves, not what you're cooking on them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they're trying to create enough confusion so that this seems like a very complicated thing. And we're all missing the point that the reality is, and this is where I was like, we can't do this whole interview and me not ask the questions, even though I don't agree with them. They're even in the hardcore like fitness health industry, people are like, a calorie is a calorie.
Right.
And that if you're saying that one calorie is better than another, you're out of your mind. So if it's like, if the people that are shredded and they look amazing and their whole focus is health, even they're pushing something that I'm like, at a cellular level, you are out of your mind.
Right.
Then you understand how confusion ends up taking over this whole argument.
So it's been an amazing journey the past couple months. As I said, I was born and raised in DC, started my career there. I've met with 50 members of Congress and senators on this issue, actually. Some of them have DM'd me. I've been doing a lot of work in DC. And I think even with them, very well-intentioned, they have kids, they see the massive metabolic dysfunction, prediabetes, obesity among their children. They're very worried. But just to paint a picture, sitting with members of Congress, they don't even understand the concept fully that they're playing the game that's been created for them, where both parties are debating how to increase access to the system that's creating destruction. I run a company too, and healthcare is very important, but everyone's concerned about access to a system that is causing violence. And my framework on this,
You have to explain that.
my framework on this is I think how we've been gaslighted. When you can think of any medical miracle, like what would you say a medical, like just what comes to mind when you think of like what's really propelled life expectancy in the last 100 years?
Antibiotics.
Great. So antibiotics is a solve for an acute situation. It's something that's going to kill you imminently, that infection. You take it for a week and you stop using it. Any medical, I would argue, anyone can think of or name that's really propelled life expectancy forward is for an acute situation, complicated childbirth, emergency surgical procedures. Giving birth 100 years ago for a woman was more dangerous than having breast cancer today.
That's crazy.
An appendicitis, a gunshot wound, these medical miracles. And, if you have a burst appendix or you have something that's going to imminently kill you, we have a miracle medical system. Unfortunately, today, what's happened is we've taken that trust and we've asked people to trust the medical system on chronic conditions. So now 90% of healthcare costs plus are on managing chronic conditions of people that are already sick. And what's happened, the more statins we prescribe, the more heart disease goes up. The more metformin we prescribe, the more diabetes goes up. The more SSRIs we prescribe, the more depression and suicide go up.
You have to be careful with that one. So, because that isn't causative, right? It's not like we don't know, I suppose, but it's certainly the studies have not been done that say that the more statins you prescribe, the more heart disease goes up. But there certainly is a correlation that we have not managed to reduce the incidence of that. But there's one thing before we get lost in that I want to say is that the thing that I think people are missing about healthcare is that it isn't healthcare, it's sick care.
Right.
And so the whole system is designed, hey, something is making you sick, which is great for business if you're in the quote unquote healthcare industry. But the hypothesis I would put down, and I know that you would put down the same one, is the thing that's making you sick predominantly, there are probably other problems as well, but the thing that's making you sick predominantly is what you're eating. So you're eating something that's making you sick in this really chronic, slow, gives us lots of symptoms to treat with lots of medication that you have to take every day. And that's great for business. And so now you've got insurance companies that the only way for them, because there's regulations, the only way for them to get their bottom line to go up is to get more sick people, because they have to pay out all but 15% or something.
That's right.
So they're hemmed in from how they can make money. Oh, if more people get sick, amazing. So while they're not necessarily driving the food industry, they probably aren't doing their best to lobby against the things that are happening to make certain things cheaper, because those things are making us sicker, so on and so forth. So if people switch it and we called it like sickness management, and then we had preventive healthcare, then I think there would be a much, like people would approach this with their eyes open to the real problem.
You would never design a system. You'd never come down, like, as an alien, come down to Earth and see 80% of adults having obesity or being overweight, 50% diabetes or prediabetes rate among adults, 93% of Americans metabolic dysfunctional, which is driving, 90 to 95% of all healthcare costs, 8 out of 10 leading causes of death. You'd never say, let's wait for everyone to get sick and then give them an incremental pill. One thing I'd push on a little bit is that I think we put nutrition and lifestyle habits in this niche preventative box. When my sister, Dr. Casey Means, was at Stanford Medical School, and a patient with debilitating migraines and depression and hypertension, she mentioned maybe they should look at their diet. The attending surgeon said, "Don't be a pussy," and said, "We did not go to nutrition school. We do serious medical interventions here, which is through a prescription pad or through a surgical intervention."
That's so
That
weird
is
to
the
me.
predominant mindset in American medicine, right?
That's
Doctors aren't nutritionists. There's 90% of doctors graduate without one nutrition class. 80% of med schools in the United States to this day, Stanford, Harvard on down, don't require a single nutrition class to graduate.
That
So
is scandalous. But
it's scandalous.
This is where it points to something other than evil. This is just moronic.
Well, I think the system is evil. I don't think the dean of Stanford Medical School is evil, right? But when Casey was there, the dean of Stanford Medical School was a pain specialist, Dr. Pizzo. And the lifeblood of medical schools, right, is funding and research funding, and the vast majority of that comes from pharma. So when he was dean of Stanford Medical School, Dr. Philip Pizzo, he accepted a multi-million-dollar donation from Pfizer and other leading opioid companies, okay? And they built a new center. And then he was appointed to the NIH panel to make, in 2011, I believe, to make opioid guidance. And he appointed 90% of the people that he brought on that panel also had conflicts, not just with their research funding, but personal consulting payments from opioid companies. And they created more relaxed opioid standards. And today, when you hear about the opioid crisis, 80 to 90% of people that overdose and die from illicit opioids, that started with a legal prescription pad. So it's all very nice, but like that's how the system works. So it's like, is Philip Pizzo, who's still at Stanford, is he a terrible person? I don't think so, but I do think it's a lack of moral clarity and frankly, a lack of leadership that they don't call this out. I have talked on this journey to leaders at, Harvard Medical School, to leaders at insurance companies, to leaders at pharmaceutical companies. They're aware of what's going on, but there's plausible deniability for everyone in the system. So I do actually think, and I'm advised, everyone likes their doctor not to attack doctors. And I think doctors by and large are doing great work on an individual level and trapped in a bad system. But I will say this, I think anyone smart in these systems, I think understands what's going on. And it's not, just going back to what you said real quick, it's not that we need to stress, I don't like this bucket of prevention.
That's interesting. Why?
Food is the best reversal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best reversal. So let's just take
an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
But I think we put food in this niche. It's very important for prevention. We should be, if we were creating our healthcare system from scratch, we'd be paying.
You just want them to also use it instead of drugs for curing somebody who's got a problem.
I'm asking the medical system to trust the science. Take somebody with Alzheimer's, take somebody with depression, right? Take somebody with other conditions. Let's take those one by one. Mm-hmm. Alzheimer's is now called type 3 diabetes. The book, The End of Alzheimer's, a lot of research coming out of major universities, by far the most efficacious way to reverse, you can actually reverse dementia, is a rigorous food and lifestyle intervention. Mm. And a lot of people in the medical system throw up their hands like, nobody's going to do that. No patients are told that. I have yet to meet a person whose parents are dealing with Alzheimer's who's even been mentioned that from the doctors. It's not in the standard of care. We propel government money, tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, per patient, per Alzheimer's patient. We could pay those patients to exercise. Like there's public policy means to promote what is the best medicine. Depression, 150 minutes of moderate exercise, zone 2 exercise, like light exercise, for 3 months consistently, 150 minutes a week, is, according to peer-reviewed academic studies, is more effective than SSRI, the leading antidepressant, with less side effects. Psychologists aren't telling that to patients.
Mention a couple more bullet points, along with what he was talking about Nixon. after World War II or during World War II is when they really started learning how to extend shelf life. And then from there, they started putting for soldiers, for the military. And then it went into the grocery stores. Yes, Bob?
I just want, could you clarify, what was the date of that presentation?
A couple of years ago.
It's very recent. Why?
It matters.
Okay, well, I watched several, and I haven't seen any change in the information.
All right.
I watched
Go ahead. What?
I was going to say I watched one a month ago somewhere else, and it's very similar. Casey was on it also, but it's the exact same information that they're giving. Casey went on it from a medical point of view, more detailed about what happens in school.
Bo, did you want to critique or?
I'll wait.
Okay, all right.
Audience, yes.
I also read some time ago
Several
that Lady
doctors in
Bird,
the audience.
John's, LBJ's wife, Lady Bird, her big movement was on how bad fats are, not looking at bad fats versus good. And the food industry started trying to pull fat out of food because people were fat conscious. So what did they do for flavor? High fructose corn syrup. About the least healthy thing we could come up with. There are a couple other things I'd just like to mention. One is the estrogen soup we are living in. We, along with things like birth control pills going into the water, obese people carry a lot of brown fat, which tends to turn testosterone into estrogen, from what I hear. While banned overseas, companies overseas make atropine and send us 70 million pounds a year. Atropine breaks down to estrogen. Sprayed on our food. Another issue is that plastics ultimately increase estrogen, and they have done a lot of research showing that there are microplastics in every organ of the body. They looked at 10 placentas. They all had microplastics in them. So it's in the air, it's in the water, and there are concerns about lowering sperm counts. Our continent has the lowest average age for puberty for girls. It's an issue. Okay, we're going to do our small group discussion. I want to reiterate the guidelines. This is meant to be a small discussion in which you share airtime. We start by going around the circle and encouraging everyone to speak for as much as a couple of minutes. After everyone has contributed, we open the discussion, but I remind those who may know more about the topic or be more comfortable talking that part of our mission here is to empower those who might be a little shyer or less informed to think about it and develop their speaking skills. So please share airtime. Thank you. Let's start. Oh, the questions are on the table. The suggested questions for discussion. They are, how seriously should we take this information? 2, what are some changes, easy or difficult, that could be made to help remedy the situation? And 3, what are the primary obstacles to such change? Okay, thank you. We're looking for anyone who solved the world's problems that would like to speak to the whole group. If you'd like to share something with the entire group, please raise your hand. Steve?
Our general consensus seemed to be, yes, it's all true like they were saying, but we're all screwed, there's nothing we can do. Other than individually, societally, it's not.
Thank you. Any Anyone else?
Oh, you taking general comment?
Yeah, open mic.
We brought up the fact that RFK Jr., Mr. Trump's selection to
But we're not having politics, it's okay.
as he can be. This is exactly one of his points, is the food industry is making us unhealthy. What I haven't heard anyone say yet is what you're going to do about it. So how do you motivate people to make better choices? We discussed this in here, the idea of healthy food deserts, like in the inner city where people get their groceries from Dollar General instead of Whole Food. How do you make tomatoes, apples, lettuce less expensive and more desirable than potato chips and cornflakes? That's one of the, RFK Jr. and I'm not.
Yeah, it's not political, it's bipartisan.
He wants to solve these crime diseases by working with the food industry and the medical industry somehow, but we haven't heard their solution.
No.
Or even a proposal.
Thank
Maybe
you.
a concept.
One thing we could consider is not giving the food subsidies to people who are involved in producing the unhealthy food and try to make healthy food less expensive.
We discussed the idea of a sin tax for the a sin tax
Uh-huh.
for the bad foods that subsidize the good food.
Yeah, except that it'll be considered racist.
Yeah, you get to item number 3 is what the option is.
Right, right.
By the way, it wouldn't have to be a sin tax, you could justify it by lowering the health costs, just like carbon tax, lowers pollution and so forth, this would be, wouldn't have to be sin.
Well, we put a lot of money into farm subsidies, so, okay, she was first, then got you ready.
Just to answer Jim, I went to Southern California a few years ago, visited the Laguna Woods area. Oh, sorry. Yeah, in Southern California, in the area of Laguna Woods, Laguna Beach, whatever. I went to a 99-cent store over there. Somebody mentioned it, or I don't even know why. And I found they had 99 cents. They had all the fresh vegetable and fruit. Unbelievable. So I bought up the half of the store. But anyway, so if I don't know how they were able to buy, the 99-cent stores were able to get the fresh veggies and fruits, and sell it for that price. But big, bags full of everything. So I don't know. I think we will have to subsidize these stores to sell it because this was affordable for sure. And it was available as, I think, 2 or 3 99-cent stores or dollar stores, whatever they were calling it.
Thank you, yeah. There are places in Europe where they require that restaurants and grocery stores do not throw out their slightly old food. It, by volunteers, is sent to the people who might not otherwise be able to afford healthy foods. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry. You're next. I'm sorry.
2 things. One, he mentioned about microplastics in the human body. There was a segment on 60 Minutes a while back about this particular issue. So if you want to hear a 15-minute segment about microplastics, you can by going to YouTube and checking that out. The other thing, this is addressed to physicians here in the room, such as Bo. What is the chance that nutrition classes, programs will be included or are included in your program of study?
Bring him the mic.
Any comment on that, Bo?
You assume that I'm stentorian enough not to require a microphone, I think. No, well, first of all, I see one of the problems in any type of discussion like this, from my point of view, is we have this binary view.
I'm sorry, what, Paul?
Give them the microphone. Either all good or all bad, they're always in between. Right? The world is gray, not black and white. This is fairly obvious. And when I graduated from medical school in 1970, there was virtually nothing taught. When I taught in medical school between, say, 9 to 10 to 30 years after that, it was being taught, but it wasn't being taught as a course. Okay? This is part of what people, words are tyrants. What they're saying is there's not a course in nutrition. Well, nutrition is a part of physiology and pathophysiology that can be compartmentalized into different areas of the curriculum. So there has been, in short, there's more representation of what we would call nutrition information in medical school teaching. I can't speak to the last 15 years.
Okay.
Up to that point. So that really does happen. Since I'm already yelling, first of all, let's take a look at this, folks. What the hell do you expect in a capitalist society? All right? What are the food companies going to do, and what is the pharmaceutical companies going to do? They're going to maximize net present value. All right? They're going to follow the good manager's credo until they're stopped. Okay? As long as it's within the rules and legal, they're going to do it if it increases profit. So the question is, who's going to and how will limits be set? Okay? Function of government, in my view, is simply to protect the externalities, which includes public welfare and the like. Where does government step in here? And how do you get it done when you've got the best politicians that money can buy?
Right. Well, they could start by not calling ketchup a vegetable in school lunches, by at least making sure people have, or children have one healthy meal a day. Remy.
Okay, I'm going to make it short because it's so much on my plate and I don't even recognize the cooking. Anyway, the ultimate goal is survival of the human species. The culprit is science and technology, greed, fear, and ego. Some time ago, the British exported opium to Hong Kong, and that's how things came to Europe. So there is a lot of things to pass around. And then we have evolution and creation, which is the secret of our existence. I'm still asking questions about that. I still have a problem to try to figure out where we're coming from and where we are going. There are different opinions on the subject. And then we're dealing with, you talk about food, cookies. Well, I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about cookies because science and technology is going to make nuts and bolts the new cookie. So, you know, there's a lot of things coming up that are going to challenge our existence.
Sure.
So I could go on, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think I put enough on your plate so you can have a healthy meal.
Thank you, Remy. Henri.
Thank you. So maybe we need to switch to the healthier snacks for the coffee and cookies.
Little better donations, and we can go there.
We've got donations and paper.
Okay.
Come on, this is America.
Okay. And I really praise the villages for so few people smoking. You know, I think that's a very good thing. It took that long to get to this point. And also, I think the idea of healthy meal at school is good. And cut back on government cheese. And, maybe they could try some experiments to see which are healthier diets for kids by having different diets run in different schools.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Steve?
To tie together some of the ideas, kick off some ideas with me about what government could do and what would have influence and what could the new administration do and so forth. It seems to me we don't really have solid information. If we have, you see, it does get press when a new study comes out and says, whatever food X will kill you or give you strokes or whatever. People pay attention and that stock in that company goes down or whatever. But anyway, bottom line is, it's very difficult to do studies on human nutrition. It takes time. How do you get people to eat the right foods and report it and so forth. It takes years to see the effects. And no one has a monetary incentive to do it. The pharmaceutical companies want to sell their drugs. Food companies just want to try and push products. So if the government, to me, that would be a legitimate role of government to do testing on all these things we wonder about. The NIH does some of it. They tested, what's that stuff for joints? They were like from crab shells.
Chondroitin.
Yeah, chondroitin. They tested that and said that was basically like a placebo. So a few things they tested, but if in fact the government took upon it as one of its roles to test things that there's no monetary incentive to test otherwise, because no one's going to make a ton of money on it. Now that would get pushed back, just like tobacco did, by lobbyists and government. But at least it's a somewhat viable path.
Thank you. And Scott, you were next, I think. Even the NIH, most of their funding for research comes from big pharma and big food. So it's a challenge.
I think one reason for the present obesity plague and one of the difficulties in attacking it is political correctness. When we were kids, I remember there was a popular polka, and the refrain was, "I don't want her, you can have her, she's too fat for me." Try playing a song like that on the radio.
Just substitute alternatively her and him.
Yeah, the other way would be okay. But my point is that being overweight has become socially acceptable now and cannot be criticized. Sports Illustrated models are criticized because they're thin. Well, damn it, being thin is being healthy. And the fashion companies are under pressure to use heavier models in their advertising. And until being overweight is no longer socially acceptable, I think it's going to be very difficult to change the eating habits and really attack the obesity problem in this country.
You ableist few. The things I hear are, you can be healthy at any weight. That's going around. And it's racist for doctors to suggest you should lose weight for your health because there's a high percentage of people of color that are overweight. Jim, I think you were next.
So if we're not going to depend upon government to solve this problem for us, can you imagine that? If you've not seen on Netflix, there's a special series of 4 episodes called Live to 100, Life in the Blue Zones. And this gentleman went to all these different areas where there are lots of centenarians, and I'm just going to give you one example. In Italy, they did a study of all these different villages, and they correlated the steepness of the village to the long life of the citizens. Also, in Japan, they found that these people who did gardening, because they were stooping down and bending over, not only did they live longer, but they had better balance, which meant they fell less often, which meant they broke their hips less often, which meant they ended up in a nursing home less often. So you can take your own efforts to do this with simple, low-impact exercise, as well as, fewer of the snack cookies that I help myself.
I looked at a chart of the top 15 countries in terms of high percentages of overweight, and I noticed the Mediterranean countries were not on that list. Makes me wonder about the Mediterranean diet. Your next friend.
I have not yet toured the nurseries south of 44, but they're huge now, and it seems to me that what they're producing should keep the prices lower. I don't know how that really is affecting, these groceries around here, frankly, but it should, and it should keep them lower and fresher, and reduce any import tax if it's necessary. Now, communities around the states could do such a thing, local farms and nurseries to, help reduce cost and help and increase health.
Thank you. Is it Zyprexa for overweight people? Oh, is that the name of the med? Yeah. Produced overseas. They don't use it there, I don't think, but they are going to make millions here.
That's another example of what I'm talking about with, I say, the impetus of the pharmaceutical companies. A whole bunch of medications initially developed for diabetes, adult onset type, if you will, being marketed for weight loss, right? All right? Weight loss. Now, no one has studied a cheap, readily available form of treatment of adult onset diabetes called metformin, which has been around for 40 to 50 years, okay? Actually, longer than 50 years, from initially. That was never studied with regard to weight loss, heart disease risk, reduction in diabetic complications. It was never studied for that back then. Then it became generic. And guess what? Now they're just starting studies to look and see if there's any difference between the effect of metformin and these very expensive, profitable, new diabetic medications. I come back to my door. What do you expect?
Oh yeah, I'm going to get back to Zyprexa. I want to mention that it has now been okay for 12-year-old children. These are our future. And what they're saying is if your child's slightly overweight at 12, you don't think about diet, you don't think about exercise, you put them on that medication for the rest of their lives, and they're currently doing research to see whether they want to recommend it for 6-year-olds that are slightly overweight. Yes?
Is there anybody here who doesn't believe that this is true?
That what?
That what we saw, that food can make the difference between health and illness? Other than Bo? I don't think that being fat is okay. Hence, why would these two drugs be the fastest selling drugs in America. People don't want to be fat. They just don't know how to be not fat. I just want to say that at our table we had a couple of explanations of personal experience. One person who had severe arthritis made a change in her diet and discovered that her pain and arthritis subsided significantly. My personal experience was, having lived in Thailand for many years, we never ever saw a fat Thai person. We never saw a fat Thai child until McDonald's came in, okay? Literally. And sweet coffee drinks became pervasive because Thai people have a real sweet tooth. And so now we're seeing a change in the population. And okay, it's anecdotal, but it seems really clear to me.
Yeah, largely what we have is anecdotal, because who's going to fund research on healthy habits versus medications? Here's a nice counter argument from Bill.
Okay, that's a perfect segue. So, half of what I know is wrong, but I don't know what half is wrong.
That's an old line.
Right.
My first day in medical school.
So let me give you an example. You talk about McDonald's. You saw the documentary Super Size Me?
Yeah.
Do you know the backstory of that? He's alcoholic. That's why he had a fatty liver. That documentary was not fairly portraying the effect of the McDonald's diet. It was portraying what an alcoholic diet does to the liver. That, you can look at the backstory of that. Where do nutrition studies come from? Who do you think funds them? Where do you think it says blueberries are good for you? The blueberry industry goes to the school and says, here's a grant. Make me a study that shows blueberries are good for you. That's how it works. This universities are getting funding cut. They're saying, go find external sources of funding. So that's every time you see a study that comes out and say, X, Y, Z is good for you if you eat it. Most likely that's where it's coming from. The whole thing is corrupted from the top down. Even the food triangle, the people who sit on that, those are industry representatives. It's very, very hard. I don't know how the average person does it. Looking at the media, knowing what is good for you. Even the Mediterranean diet, do you know how that was done? It's just not like they went out and they had dietitians and they had thousands of people. They just said, look, here's a bottle of olive oil. We give it to you. It's free. And the control is no olive oil. That's how it's done. It's not as if they went through and they said, you know, here's a diet. We're going to watch you, and you're going to only eat this. The science behind this is a lot more shaky than you might realize.
I agree, and actually it breaks my heart that comes to a point where I do not respect NIH, because we know where most of their funding comes from. I don't respect peer-reviewed journals anymore. No, Bo, you had your turn.
Don't do yes, no, yeah, right.
Well, I can't trust them. Doesn't mean they're always wrong, but I can't trust them. They were one of these foundational organizations that we tended to think were totally reliable.
I want to agree with the lady on the other side.
Brandon.
About fast food. And I think fast food is a big contributor. Based on the fact that my son went to Germany to study when he was 19. He married his wife, and you know how it goes, right? So he is still there almost 30 years later. When I first started visiting him, there were absolutely no fat people around in the area where he lived in Germany. Just none. They walked everywhere, they biked everywhere, they ate the food out of the gardens. And now, over the last, I would say 15 years or so, you see McDonald's, Kentucky Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, a couple other ones at Subway, even we know here, have started showing up on the corners. And guess what? So has the weight begun to show up on the population. So I think fast food, but I think fast food is only a representation of processed foods. So I really think that we have to get back to eating more natural food the way it occurs, instead of destroying all the vitamins and minerals in the foods.
Thank you. One thing that can stand in the way of improving this, someone said to me, well, women can't work all day and come home and make a healthy meal. They need to use ultra-processed foods. First of all, it doesn't have to be women. Hello? And what's more important? I think if there's an emphasis on nutrition, grocery stores that have pre-made meals will have pre-made, highly nutritious meals for working people. I think there are solutions.
Actually, I want Scott to tell us about your grandmother's food. We had a good discussion.
I had a nutritionist tell me, when I said, what should I eat? And the nutritionist said, Scott, when you go to the grocery store, anything your grandmother would not recognize as food, don't buy it. So don't buy a Twinkie. Your grandmother didn't recognize it.
Okay, I think we're going to wind up unless somebody else has something really compelling to share. All right. Oh, okay. So this fall here, John.
This has to do with what do you expect. When I was in grade school, I think it was, we studied, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt and the Trust Busters, and how, the Rockefellers and Big Steel and all of that, they got rid of it. And competition solved a lot of problems, child labor problems, and anyway, I would like to see a Whole Foods in the villages, more competition. We've got some healthy food around.
We do. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, I'll add to that.
Okay. Marianne.
The, 64, 24, 46 pages that we read every week, activities, go through it and see how many of them are teaching us good nutrition. That would be a way. From that, I see a new doctor this Friday. I'm going to ask him, what kinds of food should I eat? And if he can't tell me, I'm going to ask him, is there therapy that you can put me in which I can learn? Because like that guy back there said, it is very difficult to know what to choose and to read the labels, and we really do have to be educated.
The Village's Health, that a lot of us use, has nutritionists, dietitians, but only for people with diabetes. They want to wait till you have it instead of giving you advice prophylactically.
Whole Foods is everywhere. In every store, Publix and any of them, shop the outside of the store and you find those things. Where the eggs, the fruit, the proteins are. The inside of the store is highly profitable, very expensive shelf space, and people buy from there for all kinds of different reasons. But Whole Foods is all around you. You just don't realize that those same grapes, Whole Foods grapes, are also everywhere else. I come from being a farmer and a chemical engineer in the ag chemical industry. Dealt with the EPA for decades of my career and grew corn in Iowa. I see it from both sides. Corn, it can be made into corn flakes. It can be made into ethanol, and it can be made into sugar. One, you have an opinion about, and different opinion on the other side. That's the grower side. Having dealt with the EPA and governmental agencies, including NA, not my NA, but they are very, very good organizations and very efficient at environmental protection, food and drugs. National Institutes of Health. Their funding, contrary to what might have been here, is not granting aids for chemical companies like ours.
Right.
Not. That's why every company goes there to get their products blessed on the food and drug side. Same place we go to the EPA for testing, we don't pay them, we have to do the testing that they require to make sure it's safe. USDA, everything that you eat is blessed by the EPA, or USDA, government agency. I have a great deal of trust if you look deep enough to find a lot of truth there.
Thank you. Okay, this has been a great conversation. Pat, very stimulating. Pat, could you share, along with what you were about to say, the Casey Bean's site that you sent me? It's excellent. It has lots of links to information.
I'm going to first address the way you talked about talking to your doctor. You need to do this on your own. Your doctor's busy being a doctor. There are thousands of books out there. You've got to sit down, you've got to read it, and you've got to address it. There are many, many documentaries. There's a book called Ultra Processed People. You want to be scared some more, know what not to eat? Read that book. There's a book, a documentary, Eating Yourselves to Extinction. That's on YouTube. It's about processing and pesticides. Watch it. But don't ask your doctor to do this. At this point, this is your responsibility. Now, Casey Means and her brother are extremely involved. Podcasts everywhere. I watched one on Joe Rogan. It is quite clear what they believe. Her book, Good Energy, lays out everything that you should be eating. It is so difficult. I have horrible allergies. I react to everything. I should eat no chemicals. I just had some of those nuts because I eat chemicals. That's what we all do. But if you want to know the ratio of protein, how to clean your vegetables, what vegetables to choose, what not to eat, that is your responsibility. And there are so many resources. Her book is very long, but very interesting. If you don't want to read a book, watch a podcast. There are also some nonfiction books. My Year of Meats by Ruth Osecki, about all the pesticides in our foods, how the farmers grow organically next to the pesticides, because once they see what they put on their food, they don't want to eat it. But this is the way the world has been. I'm going to go back to where Bo talked. This is no different from dumped chemicals in our water, because it was okay once upon a time, and then suddenly it wasn't good to dump chemicals, okay? It wasn't good to bury oil. It wasn't good to have trash that leaked into the water system. But this was our job. It is our job at this point. And if you want to make a change, I don't know how to do that. I really don't. The only change you can really make is in yourself and in the people you directly affect. But please, read. It is so easily available. Listen. If you don't like to sit still, I walk and I listen to books on tape. That's where I read My Year of Meats. That's where I read Ultra Processed People. People have been working on this since the beginning of the time, but I think the biggest challenge now is the processing and pesticides. That's my aim.
Thank you. I'd just like to leave one comment. We're privileged. We have the money. We're all readers. A lot of us watch the extensive podcasts. What are we going to do about people in poverty in the inner cities whose children are way above average in terms of obesity and diabetes? That's something we need to address. Okay, thanks everybody.